Jordan, hopefully we have you now. I did ask you the question about do you think you could get 2 hits and 50 at bats or tackle Derrick Henry one time? I'm really interested in hearing your response to that, though.
Sorry, can you guys hear me now?
Yes,
Are we good?
can.
We got you now.
Yes.
Okay. Technical difficulties. I was going to work in some sort of Ross Atkins trying to work the phone bit there, but we'll go with the Derrick Henry thing. I would have to say I'm going to try to tackle Derrick Henry 10 times. Major league pitching is so hard to hit. I think if I could just get his shoelaces, you got to go low. I'm not going to try to go high on Derrick Henry. I'm not a crazy man, but I would rather honestly try to tackle him 10 times. I don't know over how long I have to do that, if that's, a season or a career, a lifetime, but I would rather try to do that than, go 2 for 50, which I realize George Springer, he's making hitting look really hard right now, but it is really hard. And laymen like us wouldn't do so well.
Okay, there you go. Let's pivot to the Jays deadline. We just talked about this. Do you think they did enough at the deadline to enhance their playoff chances, or was there still moves to be made out there, especially a guy like Teoscar Hernandez?
Yeah, I think the short answer is no. They didn't do enough because adding a bat, specifically a right-handed bat, and ideally one with some power, kind of like a Teoscar Hernandez, that would have been a perfect fit for this team. But it's also really hard to know, what the market even had. Like, was Teoscar even legitimately available? Or were the Mariners maybe only going to sell him if they got some sort of extensive overpay? We don't really get to know that. Without naming names, there's always 1 or 2 insiders every year that kind of throw everything at the wall. This is one of those things that I think got a lot of buzz, but we don't really get to know if this was ever a legitimate thing. And it turns out Teoscar was not dealt. So there you go. I don't think there were really very many bats available that kind of fit the profile of what is wanted and what they were looking for. So with that in mind, no, I don't think they quite did enough. But then again, I don't know if they could have done much more given sort of the restrictions that appeared to be in this market. The fact that we have 12 playoff teams every year. Now, I think it was Shai Davidi column. He pointed out that there were 21 teams on deadline day that were either in a playoff spot or within 5 games of a playoff spot. So when you have that kind of climate, not a lot of teams that are selling, you have a lot more buyers than sellers. That can make it pretty hard to make some moves.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to talk to you about, Jordan, too, is that you have all these people that are all these teams that are within those few games, and were you surprised that the Mariners decided to hold on to Teoscar and maybe even to Ty France? I could talk to you about this deadline all day between the Mets and everything that went on, but staying with the American League, are you surprised that A, the Mariners held on to Teoscar and Ty France, and B, that a team like the Angels just decided to go all in and try to bolster their team for a World Series run?
Yeah, I agree. We could do this all day. This was a really, really fun deadline. Just funny to say because, again, the Blue Jays didn't, they may be underwhelmed a little bit. But yes, as to what you're asking, I am very surprised that the 2 AL West pseudo contenders, the Angels and the Mariners, that they decided, I guess we're in. I mean, the Angels have decided they're all the way in. I have the sort of unfun take that I think they should have traded Ohtani and just gotten as much as they could have for him, because I think it's more likely that he's not going to be with the team after this season. The Mariners, I mean, you deal your closer and then you keep Teoscar, you keep Ty France. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. That's sort of a middle ground type of move. I don't know what to make of that. At least the Angels, we know they were going for it full bore, and adding Grichuk, adding Crone, adding Giolito, and adding Reynaldo Lopez. So they made a lot of moves that said, hey, we're going to try this because why not? We still have Shohei Ohtani, and ideally Trout comes back in August. The Mariners were a little more middle ground, and if I was part of that fan base, that would be very confusing for me.
As a quasi-Mariners fan, I guess I kind of am confused.
Yeah.
Speaking of confusion, is there any sense of the imagination now that because of the AL playoff picture, it's so muddled and kind of confusing, that the Astros kind of set themselves apart now, and the Rays have set themselves apart, that the Jays are kind of locked into that third and final playoff spot? Or is there a chance that they slide out of the playoffs in general?
Oh yeah, they're definitely not locked into that playoff spot. I wouldn't say that on record, but it's most likely that they're competing for a wild card spot as opposed to the division. Although even then, they're not that far out of it. When you look at this wild card race as we are right now, I mean, Boston is a team that has been weirdly hot since I think the beginning of June. And again, the Angels are trying. They're trying their best. The Yankees, they were really quiet at the deadline, so you might not expect as much out of them. But don't forget that the Yankees have played a lot of the season without Aaron Judge, or at least a lot of the past couple of months without Aaron Judge. So with him, if he returns to the form that we know him to have, maybe he can carry that offense back into being a team that's competing. And Carlos Rodon, he hasn't looked great, but again, he's there and he's a guy who's done it in the past. So definitely the Jays do not have a wild card spot locked down. But I mean, if I had to guess, I would say they are definitely in a good position to make the playoffs. It's just too early to know if that's going to happen. Hopefully it's a fun race to the end.
Speaking of too early to know, I mean, you can't put too much stock into the performance of Hyun-Jin Ryu yesterday. I mean, he's up against a tough offense like the Baltimore Orioles. It's his first start back in a long time. But at the same point in time, I mean, it was a rough outing for him in a couple of ways. What did you make from that performance? And do you agree with me that you can't just like dub it as a failure and panic right now? I think you have to wait and see, right?
100% agree with you. And that'd be, if I didn't agree with you, we could have our own little first take kind of debate show on that right now. But yeah, one appearance, I'm not going to say that is enough to determine what Hyun-Jin Ryu is going to provide to this team the rest of the way. And I was at the game yesterday, and the number of hot dogs that I consumed was the same number as the number of hits he gave up. Now, if that had been 4 or 5, you'd say, okay,
9.
Not a horrible performance.
Wow.
It was 9.
What?
It was 9. Yeah, it was 9.
Man, that's impressive. That is impressive.
Were you the guy? Were you the guy then throwing the hot dogs to other people in the stands? That
I was
saw?
not.
Oh,
I was not actually. No, I was in the 500s. I had a look at that, but it was across the stadium, and I thought people were chanting for him to get kicked out, but it was actually the opposite. They were chanting for him to be brought back. So, that's the type of thing when you're on the other side of the stadium, it gets mixed up. But to your question there, Sean, about Ryu, I mean, he's walking into a situation where he's facing the best team in the American League right off the bat. I mean, it's nice to come back at home, certainly, but this is a team he struggled against even before they were really good. So, welcome back. Here's Adley Rutschman. Here's Gunnar Henderson. Here's some guys you haven't seen before who are great Major League ball players. And obviously the Orioles hit him all over the park right from the jump. So tough for him, but I would love to see what he does next time out and the time after that, and just kind of see if he can build on this a little bit. I think it's better that he was at least able to throw a lot of strikes than if he was totally missing zone, because you can work from that and see, all right, are we able to nibble a little bit more? Are we able to kind of mix up our sequencing a little bit? At least he's starting from a point of he's shooting strikes, maybe a few too many, and they go back to the drawing board and see what they can work up for the next time out.
Is this a 6-man rotation going forward? I mean, again, it could also be too early to tell, but that seems to be the plan, yeah?
I mean, it's a 6-man rotation right now because they're in a stretch of 17 games in 17 days. So it makes sense because it allows you to bake in some extra rest, especially for a guy like Gossman and I believe Barrios are the two guys in this rotation who really benefit from that extra rest day. But I don't think it's something that you would want to carry on for much longer after that as we get into kind of the meat of September, especially. That's going to be a time where you're going to want more, I think, options in the bullpen because you want to play those matchups a little more as the games start to feel more important. Every game's super important, but obviously when we get down late in September and they're all divisional games, those start to feel like playoff games. So it's a 6-man rotation right now. You could call it maybe a bit of an audition for Ryu, Manoah, potentially Kikuchi even, as someone who has experience in the bullpen. I don't think we're going to be able to keep all three of those guys in the rotation come September, or at least mid-September. And there will be some interesting decisions to make by that point.
Jordan, before we get you out of here, last question. What's up with the Jays at second base? Is Whit Merrifield going to be your everyday second baseman? Is there still going to be times we see Kevin Biggio out there, which I think is an absolute mistake, having a guy who can barely hit over 100 still play. But what do you think the Jays' outlook is for second base for the rest of the season?
I mean, I think Paul DeYoung has a shot at that, and then Espinal, really. I mean, if you look right now at the way Fangraphs projects it, they actually have Espinal taking the lion's share of the plate appearances from second base. So potentially his spot, but I mean, he's not hitting well at all. So I think DeYoung, he has an opportunity here while Bichette is hurt. And of course, we hope that Bichette's not out for very long, but DeYoung has an opportunity to play shortstop and ideally get something going with the bat. And then I think from there, second base just becomes, because it's not a position where defensive value is very prominent or very notable, it becomes a situation where you can just try to ride a hot bat if you have one.
Well, hopefully the Jays figured out that issue. Jordan, we want to thank you for sticking through those technical difficulties and joining us. It's a pleasure as always, and we'll catch up with you in no time soon.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much.
Soon enough. Whatever. I'm still getting used to this. I'm still getting used to this hosting gig right now. Let me
doing a great job now.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks, guys.